Hulse is back. Let's see what he's got going on.
And so testosterone is like a weapon. Testosterone, that's why there's such an attack on testosterone in our culture. Testosterone is like a weapon in a man, and it gives him strength, it gives him might, it gives him fortitude, it gives him virility.
Yo, Elliot!
Yes, as we all know, the war on testosterone is rampant, much like the war on Christmas.
Yo, Elliot, got a question for you regarding effeminacy and combating the temptations of demons. You shared a quote from St. Thomas Aquinas.
The temptations of demons? Oh, good.
Where he defined effeminacy as something akin to an aversion to pain and attachment to pleasure.
As we all know, all these effeminate women out there, they never have had to deal with pain. Which is why men give birth to children.
What strategies would you employ to combat the demon of effeminacy? NoFap has been very helpful, and now I'm trying to establish a consistent...
I used to be all effeminate and masturbate, and now I'm a real man because I don't touch my own dick.
Morning routine that sets me up to dominate the day. Thank you for all you do. And so when St. Thomas Aquinas speaks in terms of the aversion to pain and the attachment to pleasure, it kind of echoes the initiation process that cross-culturally has been present in all civilizations, and especially civilizations that recognize that they need to make very good active use of the men, the young men in their societies. Today, we're allowed to be useless. Right? Many of us are useless. And
define useless. What do you mean by useless, Elliot?
There's no initiation process to make us useful. And when I say useful, I mean in a very masculine way, being a useful man, right? Not just a useful person, but somebody who carries a sense of purpose, meaning, mission, dignity into their world.
So women and non-binary people can't have purpose and dignity and bring meaning into their world? Yikes.
And so that movement is a movement away from, and this is the pattern that we see cross-culture, is a movement away from the world of the mother and an atonement with the world of the father. And that there are elements that are associated with that. The world of the mother is associated with pleasure. It's associated with comfort. It's associated with material creature comforts, right? Things that feel good, like masturbating, right? Masturbation, overeating, playing video games, things of this nature that sort of drain our energy and keep us trapped as little boys. Even, I think...
Okay, let me give an example, Elliot. Elliot, you do bodybuilding stuff, right? You're very into fitness, which is great. Obviously that works out for you, and that's wonderful. You presumably get some sort of pleasure from these things, right? Or at minimum, a satisfaction. Like people like Arnold Schwarzenegger have said the same thing. Let me show you. Hold on. Oh God, how do you spell his name? Schwartz. Here's a clip from famous film Pumping Iron. This was a documentary that showed Arnold Schwarzenegger and Lou Ferrigno for like the first time on film. This was a documentary about them being in a bodybuilding competition.
It's as satisfying to me as coming is, as having sex with a woman and coming. So can you believe how much I am in heaven? I'm like getting the feeling of coming in the gym. I'm getting the feeling of coming at home. I'm getting the feeling of coming backstage when I pump up, when I pose out in front of 5,000 people. I get the same feeling. So I'm coming day and night. I mean, it's terrific, right?
So, for Arnold Schwarzenegger, who I assume, Elliot being a bodybuilder, he probably sees Schwarzenegger as very manly. Schwarzenegger is on record saying that he gets as much pleasure from bodybuilding and doing that as an activity and fitness as someone who masturbates chronically or whatever. You know what I mean? So is that effeminate because he gets pleasure out of it? Would Thomas Aquinas be like, Arnold Schwarzenegger, you bitch boy, stop it. You need to go inside and do something you don't like play violent video games. Because Schwarzenegger does not like violent video games, which is kind of ironic considering, the movies he's been in. But my point is this, that's subjective, which is why putting labels on any of this stuff is, silly. And when you say something as stupid as things that are pleasurable to you are automatically effeminate, it just makes you sound like an idiot.
The guys that are, into the pickup, right? Chasing women, using dating apps.
He is in violent video games. He's in Mortal Kombat 11 as the Terminator.
I think that's just chasing pleasure. I think it's just effeminacy. And sex in particular is not just a form of pleasure and entertainment. It becomes a sense of pride too. So it really is a slippery slope it's a little different than pornography and beating off because there's a sense of shame and guilt afterwards. But then, you can get very good.
I'm telling you, all these no-fap dudes who are exclaiming that, after masturbating, they feel a sense of shame, they got some deep-seated issues. If you're an adult and you still feel, ashamed after you masturbate, you have some issues with your own sexuality that you need to work on, because that is not normal.
But at laying down these 304s, right? And that could lead to a sense of pride. And pride is fueled, effeminacy is fueled by pride, right?
And certainly, Elliot Hulse has no ego whatsoever, okay? Him and Andrew Tate, they're very masculine because they have no egos whatsoever. They're definitely not prideful.
It just keeps us trapped. So this movement is away from all the things that are pleasurable and a movement into the world of the Father. And the world of pattern is the world of challenge. It's the world of struggle, austerity, breakdown, ultimately so that there can be a build up in meaning, in purpose, in vision, and dignity in your life. And so what I'm calling for here is for men to recognize this pattern. And I think that we have to initiate ourselves in a world where there are no old initiators. There's no reason to initiate. There's no true liminal space in our society. Everything's profane. Nothing really actually means anything. And so rites of passage, initiation for men, even if we do, you go to something that promotes that, or you have an experience, unless everybody recognizes it, it only means something to you, which is unfortunate, because then there's really no celebration. There's no sense of renewal in your community, because people reflect or respond to you differently because they know you've been initiated, right? These are all.
What is he even talking about? It's like he's speaking in vague generalities because he has something to say that he can't say on YouTube or something, or he just has vacuous thoughts, because neither of these things mean anything. When he's talking about some sort of initiation, does he mean there are certain societies that do various initiations for young men to become, or for boys to become men, bar mitzvah ceremonies in the Jewish community. I know there are some tribes that do you put painful stinging ants on your hands to prove that you're a man. We've kind of grown past a lot of that stuff as a society. It's fine. There are informal things like this, teaching your kid to drive, but that's not a specifically masculine thing. Taking your kid to hunt or something. A lot of people in my area find that to be sort of a thing to do with your kids, but it doesn't necessarily have to be about your sons. It can be about your daughters too. It's just this idea of the severely divided, distinct gender roles are outdated, specifically because we're not hunter-gatherers. We're not even really agrarian anymore. We're people who sit in office cubicles or at home doing Zoom meetings. These harshly defined gender roles that require men to be like emotionless robots that are gonna go to war with a neighboring tribe and are gonna have to watch their friends have their guts ripped out. You know, it's just not reality. We don't live in that world, and it's for the better. It's for the better.
Amazing things that would be available to us, you know, if we still had this practice. But because we're so topsy-turvy and we're so chaotic in our values and
Oh, he for sure reads Jordan Peterson.
nobody believes the same things, it's very hard to do unless you're a part of a community. So anyway, you ask me what strategies would you employ to combat the demon of effeminacy? First, it's
The demon of effeminacy. I need to get an exorcist in here, because boy, the demon in me is strong.
that movement away from the mother. To combat that demon means to mortify the flesh. It means to break yourself of all various addictions, all various pleasures. You know, what comes to mind as I say that is Cole Robinson. Check out Cole Robinson, the snake diet wizard, right? He's big into fasting. He's huge into fasting. Fasting is one of the best ways to start breaking yourself from all forms of effeminacy, because food is usually our most insidious addiction. But I was thinking of Cole because he also doesn't sleep on a bed, right? He sleeps on a yoga mat. And I'm not even there yet. I don't even think I want to get there. But my point is that he's willing to challenge himself, and by doing so, setting aside pleasure. You got to learn how to set aside pleasure. You got to break yourself off from pleasure. And then that's not good enough. And that's
Fellas, is enjoying your life gay?
usually where most people stop. A lot of times, like right now, I think dopamine detoxes are great. Dopamine detoxes are, you know, I guess they're trending. Like people are doing them, and for right reason. They're good. They should be done because we have way too much that keeps us trapped in that chemical response, that high. That's good. And it's also good that we challenge ourselves, right? That's why, you know, lifting in the gym is a good idea. Challenging yourself, doing things that are hard, right? Like maybe learning a craft, learning a skill. And so testosterone is like a weapon.
Kitty restarted the video. Gosh dang it.
Various pleasures. And that's usually where most people stop. A lot of times, like right now, I think dopamine detoxes are great. Dopamine detoxes are skill. You know, doing sports, you know, running triathlons, just doing something that requires you to be disciplined, that requires you to have commitment, that requires you to get uncomfortable in order to reach that goal, right? Like,
Doesn't your wife do a lot of physical activity and sports and stuff with you, Elliot? Does that mean she's not feminine? If these are activities that are supposed to help you be masculine, is your wife masculine? That'd be fine. I wouldn't care. I just wondering based on your own definitions.
let's say you set a goal of like a 700-pound deadlift. All that's good. So these are two parts of a three-part process. The first part is to break your addiction to material, to mama, to pleasure. Challenge yourself. And this is really in the initiation process. This is kind of like the rites of passage, where the older men would break down the younger boy by giving him something tough to do. For example, my brother did a Native American sun dance, which is a rites of passage initiation process that he did when he was in college. And one of the things they had him do is they put him up on the top of a mountain somewhere, right up on a cliff. They found a rock for him to sit on, drew a circle around it, and said, "Sit there and don't move." He had to sit there and stay in that circle for 4 days. They call it a vision quest.
If you want to be a real man, you gotta sit here and wait for the hallucinations to set in from dehydration, okay? Only real men dehydrate and starve themselves for 4 days for no good reason.
And he couldn't eat, he couldn't drink, and he's sitting there in the hot sun, right? So it's like something tough to like just break you down, to break your will, right? To break your will. But that's not good enough. Like I said, it's a three-part process. There's a movement away, there's a breakdown of the old ego, but then there has to be a recalibration. There needs to be a reconstruction of a new ego, a new way. And this is where in these societies, the older men would instill value through religion, through mythology, through stories,
Society still does that. Society still collectively tells stories that are meant to tell a message. And then when they do that, a bunch of chuds on Twitter will be like, stop putting politics in my video games and movies and comic books. The stories we collectively tell as a society still have morals. Our modern mythology, our canon of our society is still a thing that teaches lessons. There's just a lot more of it than there used to be. So there's not one defining mythology of our age, right? There isn't like one specific religious text or anything that guides everyone within our society. We have so much media out there. We have so many stories that people basically selectively pick which mythologies, which stories and messages they want to instill not only in themselves but their families. It's just the same thing, but more.
This is where tradition would be instilled. And that way the young man not only recognizes himself, because when you get broken down and then you overcome it, you could still go back and be effeminate because you start feeling proud about yourself, right? Oh, look at me. I'm a tough guy. I did this and nobody else could do it. Or I overcame this. But it needs to be, I just want to take note that this typically happens at a time when testosterone starts rising in a young man's body. And so testosterone is like a weapon. Testosterone, that's why there's such an attack on testosterone in our culture.
Testosterone to me felt like poison.
Testosterone is like a weapon in a man, and it gives him strength, it gives him might, it gives him fortitude, it gives him virility. That needs to be pointed in the right direction, and for that to be pointed in the right direction, there has to be a sense of transcendent meaning, bigger picture. There needs to be a sense of eternity. Right? That you're living for the dignity of your father and your grandfather and your father's father. You see what I'm saying? For all the men.
I am living not for myself or for my future or my loved ones. I am living exclusively for dead people, okay? Don't you dare tell me that there's a better way to live life, okay?
That came before you, that lived the journey of life the way you're about to do it. And that's hard today. That's hard today because life changes so quickly. The quote unquote progress means that, you have much less in common with your father than he had with his father, and so on and so forth. So we can't even agree on the same values. So you have to find, and this is why I've been attracted to religion.
AKA my kids don't hate gay people. Why has society done this to me?
Religion, my whole life. I've always been attracted to religion. And as I've gotten older, I've gotten more conservative. And that's why I become Catholic. Because I want to have a sense of eternity so that the things that I do go beyond this life. Because life starts to catch up on you as well, right? Like I'm middle-aged. I'm going to be 42 next week. Actually, Saturday, I'm going to be 42. So you start having a bigger picture perspective on life, right? And so when you have this, when you have the consideration for an afterlife, when you have the consideration for the state of your soul, when you have the consideration of the Orthodox like to call it deification, right? The perspective of actually becoming your most saintly self, becoming your perfect you, right? New Agers would call it your Christed self, right? This is a narrow path, and it gives you when you walk on a narrow path, right? All the mythology that the young men would learn, or the religion that they would learn, they would always offer a man a narrow path. Of course, today it's the wide path. Everything's about the wide path. Remember we spoke earlier about do what you want, do whatever you want.
Why aren't people adhering to my very strict and very, 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 very specific gender roles? People are out here being who they want to be and being happy and thriving. I cannot stand it because it makes me uncomfortable. This is what Elliot sounds like. Stop it, Elliot. You're happy with the way you live, and that's wonderful. I'm very happy for you. If that's how you find your purpose, by adhering to those very specific gender roles, great. That's awesome. I'm happy you found something that makes you happy. I hope it really does make you happy. But that doesn't make everyone happy. It in fact hurts many people who don't feel comfortable in those roles. So that's fine. You do you, and let other people do them. It's simple.
You could just zigzag, wiggle, woggle, and go back and forth down any path you want. Nobody really even cares because nobody cares, right?
Yeah, so it seems like it's a you problem. If everyone else is cool with it, and young people on the whole are cool with it, that's just a you're a boomer issue. And I know the boomer thing is overused, and I know he's not actually a boomer. I'm using it as synonymous for someone who is old or getting older. I know in your 40s you're not really old. You're someone whose ideals and model of the world are out of date and you were refusing to update it. Instead, you do the Principal Skinner meme of, am I wrong? No, it's the children who must be wrong. Like, no, that's not really how it works.
There's no sense of tradition. But when you do choose to impress it upon yourself, when you do choose the narrow path, your life starts to become molded by mortification. You start rejecting all things that would let you fall back into effeminacy, right? To walk that narrow path, there's no room for effeminacy. There's only room for being righteous, being rigid, being on that tightrope. And there's no time to slip. Life goes by very quick. I think about so many of the years that I wasted slipping, walking zigzag, right? It's good to choose. It's good to choose a path. It's good to choose something. And I'm talking about the eternal path. I'm talking about the divine path. I'm talking about religion. It's good to choose something that provides boundaries for you, a life.
Sure, people have personal moral codes or moral codes that they believe exist outside of themselves. That's a pretty common thing. That's not unique to religions, although most people are religious. That's pretty typical.
Of challenge for you, but also gives a sense of meaning to your suffering and to your challenges and your sacrifices. So that's it, man. I think if we walk that way, effeminacy would just fall away. It's a breaking down of the old man, the old boy, the old material mommy comforts, a challenge that shows you what kind of grit you got, and then a sense of meaning, a sense of purpose, a sense of divine eternity. And I don't think we can go wrong if we live that way. So I hope that helps, dude. Done.
Yo, it's your bro Elliot. I hope you enjoyed that.
Jesus Christ. Ooh, we're on a hype train. I'll come back. I gotta pee so bad. Again, I've been drinking this, and I'm almost halfway done with it. So, keep the hype train going. I'll put on a video real quick. And then I'm gonna go pee, and then we'll watch something else, and I'll read bit messages during the